steel industry plays an essential role in the growth of any modern society. The state of the steel production and consumption in Nigeria, as well as in construction industry, is very important for every nation's economy. It is one of the most important steel-using industries, accounting for more than 50% of the world's steel demands. There is no doubt that electricity is central to the industrialization of any nation, as reliable and adequate electricity supply produces a multiplier effect which goes a long way to tackling the problem of poverty, unemployment, and prevalent absence of technological and structural changes that are commonly seen in many developed countries or developing countries like Nigeria. I have Mr. Johnson Chukwu, is the CEO of Kari Assets Management Limited. He joins me to continue this discussion from where we stopped. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for your time. I'm looking at the electricity consumption and the steel industry. Many say that a lot needs to be done to improve it so that we can actually harness the benefits or the potentials of that sector. Let's start on that note. How well do you see us industrializing without a functional steel industry?
Thank you, Tolu, for having me. The steel industry is at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. And for any country to industrialize, you need to have a viable steel industry. Virtually all the heavy-duty equipment in the world rely or have steel as a major input material. Talk of vehicle manufacturing outfit, talk of steel, talk of vessel manufacturing outfit, talk vehicle, ship manufacturing, aircraft. Major industrial activities involve steel, including your buildings. You need iron to do your decking. You need iron to have your foundation. Today, we're even using iron, which is a product of steel, to do roads. I mean, the cement road that being done by Dangote and some other states like Ebonyi need iron to do the base. So the steel industry is critical for any economy to industrialize because it is a key component of most heavy-duty industries.
A good way to start. But some are saying that this sector is also intensive, an intensive consumer of power, that's electricity. And some are saying that even those that have powers from the grid might not even be paying appropriately. That's the Energy Consumers Association of Nigeria raised this issue, saying that proper metering and this sector needs to be checked so that Nigerians are not paying for what they don't consume, because many believe that these schools just distribute these bills and all they need is just to get their own bottom line.
Well, in the first place, the steel industry is an energy-intensive industry. And as it stands today, Nigeria has paltry supply of energy in the country. We don't even have enough energy to feed the households. I mean, household consumption, talk of industrial consumption. Nigeria today does not have, I'm not sure you have any major industrial outfit that is relying on public power supply to operate. Talk of an energy voracious sector like the steel industry. So for me, if the steel industry has to come up in the country and be viable and play the role it's supposed to play in the industrialization of the country, we must find alternative power supply to the energy to the steel industry. If you recall, one of the major steel industries in the country, or the two major steel industries we are situated where the government has also had to provide power. Ajaokuta steel industry, the government had to take a pipeline all the way to Ajaokuta to provide gas pipe. I mean, take a gas pipeline all the way to Ajaokuta. That's why you have a Ajaokuta pipeline a gas pipeline up to Ajaokuta from Warri. The Delta Steel Alaja also has a gas pipeline that led to their gate. The key thing why the government did those in the 70s was because they realized that these industries cannot operate from the national grid. The national grid production may not even be enough to feed a complex as big as Ajaokuta Steel factory. Talk less of now feeding other factories that may come up when we really have a viable steel industry. So, for me, being a gas, what to call a gas rich country, what Nigeria should do is to have gas pipelines across the country, crisscross across the country. Already there's a gas pipeline going all the way to Kano. And if we have a good network of gas pipelines, then steel industries can spring up and get their energy supply from gas-powered plants. or set of furnace that will power get their energy supply from gas. We really can have the steel industries run on the public electric supply grid. That having said that, the other thing you mentioned is the issue of loss of power or power generated. Of course, if you look at the privatization program of the power sector, one of the criteria for selecting the company that won the bids for the discos, the distribution companies, was the ability to reduce the aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. That's ATC and C, which is to reduce the quantity of power that is lost between the point of generation and transmission out to the point for which payment is made for those power. That is reducing the transmission losses, reducing the distribution losses, and reducing the commercial and collection losses. That was one of the criteria that were defined those who won the bids. So the key thing is that how far have they gone in reducing the AT&T? The last time I checked, some of the discos have AT&T, ATC and C of higher 60%, which means they are losing 60% of the power that is fed into their network in terms of the revenue they get from those power. So if you don't reduce the ATC and C, you are not going to have households that will get power supplies. You are not going to have commercial, discos will not be commercially viable because they are losing virtually all their power in terms of the power they get and the power they get paid for.
A very big one there. Now, I'll take you dovetail to energy theft, which is very common even among residential areas and all of that. This, according to many, say is a threat even to our economy and to the GDP of the country. Mr. Chukwu, do you also agree with this?
Yes, I agree. But the interesting thing, technology has actually made it possible for a disco to circumvent the issue of energy theft on its grid or on its network. I'll give you an instance. Last year, I paid for a meter in my country home in Ugweke. And that meter, when I got home in December, I realized the meter was installed on the power generation pole, on top of the pole. So you can't climb there. And then they gave me a token or a handheld device that I can recharge. And when I recharge it, it goes into the meter that is installed on top of the pole. So there's nobody that can go to that pole and tamper with that meter. So technology has gotten to that extent. The key challenge we have in reducing the issue of power theft or energy theft is because the discos do not have enough money to meter all the households. Because smart metering today is such that they can actually measure the power that got up to a transformer and then determine what power was paid for and identify which households got consumption or consumed energy without paying for it. And now we're talking of prepaid meter. So the key challenge you have is that they don't have enough monies to meter the households with prepaid meter, so people have to pay in advance for their power consumption. And that's why you are still having such level of losses in terms of commercial and collection losses. The other aspect is that they need to strengthen their distribution grid and strengthen the Transcon, the transmission company of Nigeria also has to strengthen the transmission grid because we are having grid failure because the transmission grid is weak. It does not have the capacity to wheel out up to 7,000 megawatts of power supply, power generation. Those are the challenges we have. Lack of investment, lack of economic resources to make the appropriate investment that you need to close this ATC and C, that's aggregate technical, commercial and collection losses.
Indeed, very importantly, as we wrap up, even in South Africa, an Electricity Revenue Protection Association was actually formed because of issues like this. You know, they do a lot about mining and all of this and power consuming just because they wanted appropriate pricing for power. Now, let's wrap up on this note. Some say there's need to set up a national regulatory body on steel development. That's all across to check all the issues, all of the issues we talked about before that have been encouraging importation, the electricity challenge, energy theft, that maybe there needs to be a body that could take charge and, monitor this and report back to, if possible, the discos and even the federal government.
I completely disagree with that. I don't think there's any need for us to create another bureaucratic agency to do simple things. The issue of the steel industry is the issue of a lack of assets to energy. And I said, we don't need to connect to national grid. What we just need is have the gas pipelines crisscross the country, extend the gas pipelines to major areas where you have scrap metals or where you have iron ore. And then the steel industries can spring up. Then the other aspect is the use of appropriate regulatory framework, appropriate trade policies in the sense of in terms of what are the duties, the tariffs you impose on fully processed steel, and what are you imposing on iron ore, which is a major feedstock for steel industry. If you have appropriate tariffs that are discriminating in terms of being steep on fully processed steel, then that will be a good incentive. And then we can also allow for very low duty on scrap metals that can be brought into the country, because those are the key input materials that the steel industry need. I don't think any of these things is rocket science that we need to set up another bureaucratic agency to regulate that. That, for me, can be addressed using the trade policy of the country and using fiscal tools in terms of tax incentives.
I know you don't work with NEC, but I want to ask you that if you're to say what should be done to companies or big companies, even residentials or metal companies or steel companies caught tampering with meters, or anything that has to do with illegal connection, what do you think should be done to them?
The good thing is that the legislation is very clear. The NEC, they are clearly defined sanctions under the Nigerian statute for those who tamper with power connections or those who steal power. The key thing is it's not being enforced or being observed. Enforcement is in abeyance. So we don't need to make any new law. All we just need is enforce those laws. And one of the things I observed that some of the discos are doing now is that if you have an arrears of unpaid bill and you move to a new place and you want them to connect, they will transfer those bills to you instead of asking the new tenant or a new resident of your previous resident to now absorb a bill he or she did not account for. Those are some of the frictions that are created between them. The other issue is the issue of estimated billing, where customers are unduly penalized on daily tax for the inefficiency and ineffectiveness of the discos to meter them. So once we eliminate that, you improve on the relationship between the consumers and the discos. Other things we need to do, we need to have a cost-reflective tariff. The discos must be able to recover their cost from the power they sell. They cannot be paid a tariff that is lower than their cost of power, energy supply. If you have that, it's clearly an indication that you have a problem in that industry. If you do those things, and I think we could have, in the immediate future, a viable electricity industry that will provide power to the households, charge them appropriately, and I'm sure the cost of alternative power supply is several times more than getting power from the national grid.
Of course, that's David Ada, CEO, Cowrie Assets Management Limited. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure.